biology. Today our topic is adaptation. I told you, I gave you an example of adaptation. What things came in adaptation? What is the process of adaptation in biology? This is some physical features in which organism, environment, and species have to survive in their environment for the continuous production of their species in this nature. Okay, so firstly we have to start from the basic concept of the adaptation. So yes, here we have a few examples of adaptation as well. So we will start from the first thing, that in order for any organism to survive, it has to be somehow be adapted to its environment. This is a common fact. If any species has to live in this environment, they have to adapt that physical and the chemical features of the environment. This is a necessary step. So this could be a polar bear. For example, if we have a polar bear, here I have an example of polar bear. Okay, if we have a polar bear having a really thick fur to help it with strength, polar bears used to live in Iceland areas. They used to live in a glaciers land. So that's why they live in extremely cold weather, because they have a very thick fur, and that helps them to warm up their body during the cold winter. The cold or the big eyes. Another example, we have an owl. Okay, owl has a very big eyes that allow it to see in the dark, because scientists love categories. Okay, so here we have another example of the owl. Owl has a very big eyes, and there is a certain example scientists prove that owl is able to see things during a night vision, because he's a very strong eyesight. So they put these adaptations into the, for example, if old can't able to see in night, it's mean that there is a no adaptation. If he has to survive, this is the only bird he used to fly during the night time. And in night time there is so dark, so he it has to be a very bold and dark, very big eyes to see in a dark. Okay, okay, so they put these adaptations into these different groups, these that are structure. We have a three different groups of adaptation. One is environmental, another one is structural, another one is a functional. Okay, these are the structural, behavioral, structural, and the functional. How a special group of microorganisms called extremophilus can live in the most extreme places on the plant. Okay, when we collectively call these adaptations together, we have another example, which is the exomophilus. Exomophilus is a species which they are used to live in a high temperature as well, and they're also used to live in a extremely cold temperature. I give you the example of a bacteria in a last class of biology. Okay, so we will move to the next, structural adaptation. What is the structural adaptation? This is the physical feature of any organism, their shape, their color. Structural adaptations are the physical features that we see, like the organism shape, color. So if you think seals and walrus, we have two examples, seals and walrus. They have some kind of structure, they have some kind of colors to adapt that structural adaptation in their nature to survive in this nature. Okay, so what are these? The reason they are this rounded shape is because they live in environment, so they need a good store of fat and low surface area. For example, they are so much fatty animals. They have so much space in their stomach. Why they have so much space in their stomach and why they are so fatty? Because they have to survive in that area in which there is a lack of food. Okay, which both help them to conserve their body heat, and they have this gray brown color to help camouflage them from predators, and they have a very unique colors. That colors help them to survive from the predators. Who are the predators? Who can kill them, who can eat them? Okay, this is the concept of a shape they have for the survival of the for the taking storage of the food, for the survival in this nature. And why they have color? To protect themselves from the predators. Okay, we have another example, they have a conserved body heat, a rounded shape. That's why they have a rounded shape, because they live in a very cold area. They can conserve their heat. If there is excessive amount of cold, they will have a heat in that body, and that body will give a normal temperature. That's why they have a green brown color to help camouflage. So another we have a next adaptation, which is a behavioral adaptations. These are the kind of behaviors that environment help any organism to adapt to survive in this nature. Okay, I hope you're understanding all these topics.
Yeah.
Okay, in behavioral adaptation are the way an organism behaves or act. So the fact, say, for example of behavioral adaptation is basically what the way an organism behave or act. Okay, for example, if we have an example of elephant, flapped areas back and forth and spray themselves with water or behavior. Whenever elephants need, they have to clean themselves, there is a high temperature, they used to clean themselves, they used to shower themselves with their trunk. Okay, this is the in behavioral adaptations to the hot environment in which they live, because both of these behaviors are going to help cool them down. Similarly, swallows or some other birds migrate. We have another example which are known as a swallows. Okay, elephants shows a behavior adaptation because when they're high temperature, they bath themselves, they shower themselves to get a normal temperature. For example, if we have another example which are swallows. Swallows are the birds, they migrate. They migrate when there is a warmer region, they move to the cooler region. When there is a cooler region, they move to the warmer region because of the normal temperature. This is the behavior adaptation of any microorganisms. Okay? During the winter, which allows them to avoid the cold and lack of the food their summer homes. Okay, during the cold they face some kind of lack of food, that's why they have to move in the warmer region. So, and then last and the most important is the functional adaptation. Okay, functional adaptations means that there are so many organisms, they perform some kind of functions to adapt the environmental nature. Functional adaptations are the hardest one to notice. These are so much hard. These relate to the process going on inside an organism body. This adaptation is going to happen inside any organism's body. Okay. For example, an organism body like their metabolism or reproductive system. Example, many deserts animals conserve water by producing very little sweat. For example, if we have an example of camel, they're used to live in a desert. There is so much lack of water there. Okay, they are land, dry land. Okay, so whenever camel drinks the water, they have a very huge storage in the stomach. They used to store a kg of water in the stomach, and they used to release sweat in a very very low amount because the survival in the desert, because they have to survive in that hot weather. Okay, and they have a very small amount of concentration of urine, while camels accumulate lots of fat in their humps, which they can break down later to release water. For example, camel have some kind of lumps in their inside the body. When they break down, they used to produce water for their survival in the deserts. So putting all of this together, let's take a typical guess. So after doing this, we have a very typical and a random test about this. We have to consider all these adaptations together. We have one species which contains all these functions. Okay. So here this is the kind of example. This is the kind of question which will be in your exam. This is just a little guess. Okay. So the brown bear, also known as the Eurosus arcos, is found across the northern latitudes of America and Russia. Their diet is extremely diverse and variable, including plants, fungi, fish, invertebrates, and mammals like deer. So we have three kinds of adaptation is performed by this polar bear. Okay, this brown bear. So this is a kind of question which can related to this adaptation. Describe how brown bears are adapted to live in the environment, how they can survive, how they can adapt these kind of things to survive in this nature and to continue their breeding. Northern latitudes tell, so we have an example of this. We have a northern latitudes. Northern latitudes means told us that there is a very cold temperature out there, and if they are very cold temperature, it means we have a structural adaptation. The brown bear has a very thick fur, which help him to live in a cold weather, to maintain his body, to maintain its body temperature. So move to the next, to its diet. As they told me, they are very extremely diverse and variable. It means that beer has to adapt each. There is a four kind of different weathers, and every weathers have their unique organisms. So if brown beer has to survive in this nature, it has to adapt the natural functions, environmental functions. So during the winters and hot summer, he used to catch the fish, and during the cold winter, he used to catch the beer. So these are the two things, like it has a very strong muscles, that he could swallow beer, he could digest beer, and there is a very strong muscles, very strong paws and nails, it could capture fish under the sea. Okay, I hope you got the idea about this,
Yeah.
all of these things. Okay, so we have an extreme environment. I told you the example of a extremophilis. Extremophilis is a bacteria called archaea. This bacteria is used to live in a very cold temperature, and it also used to live in a very high temperature. This is the example I told you in the last class, when this is a breed used to continue, used to reproduce, used to continue their growth, because they have a different kind of variations, mutations in their genes. Okay, they have to survive in the temperature. Yeah, they have to continue their species, so they have to adapt the natural process of environmental laws, environmental issues. Okay, so we will move to the next thing, which is the natural selections. Okay, this is natural selection. If you have to define the natural selection is the mechanism through which living creature populations adopt a change. Okay, there is a two to four things that happens in the natural selection. Natural selection is basically an environmental process. If any species want to continue, their species want to reproduce, they have to do interbreeding, they have to do show a mutation, variation, natural selection, inheritance and evolution in their genes. So we will start from this. It states that the organisms that are able to survive and reproduce while changing environmental conditions are selected by nature, while the ones, so these are the few rules. If you have to survive in this nature, you have to adapt the rule of these natures.